The auction hall was loud. Voices from every corner shouted prices. Alien merchants laughed, ate strange food, and watched the stage where slaves were brought out one by one. Most of the slaves were already broken. Their eyes had no life. Their heads were down, some cried, some didn't move at all. The buyers liked that. They didn't want trouble, just entertainment. Then she was brought in. The chains around her wrists were too tight. Her feet were dirty. Her hair was messy, her body thin, but her eyes were different. They were not empty. She looked at the crowd like she hated every one of them. Next item, the alien announcer shouted, pushing her forward. Species, human, age, unknown, untouched, unbroken, perfect for personal fun. The crowd laughed. Some whistled. Others came closer. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She didn't look away. She just stood there, staring at them like she was waiting. The announcer hit a button. A small shock went through her body. She winced but didn't fall. Didn't scream. That's strange, one merchant said, scratching his slimy head. She didn't scream? Another merchant laughed. Maybe she's already dead inside. But she wasn't. She was very much alive, and she was watching everything. A tall alien in a red robe stepped forward. Start the bidding, he said. 10 units, shouted someone from the left. 20, 25. The bidding started fast. But there was one man who didn't speak. He stood at the back, in the shadows. His eyes were not like the others. They weren't full of hunger. They were full of something else, anger, and pain. He watched her closely. Then the girl whispered something. Her voice was dry and quiet, but clear. Claim me, or I'll suffer here. No one else heard. But the man in the shadows did. His eyes widened. He stepped forward. 50 units, he said. The crowd went quiet. The announcer smiled. Ah, we have a serious buyer. 60, someone shouted. 70. 90, the man didn't blink. 200. Gasps filled the room. Are you crazy? One merchant shouted. She's just a human girl. She's not worth that. But the announcer grinned. Sold. The man walked up to the stage. The girl looked at him for the first time. Her eyes narrowed. She knew him, but didn't remember why. Take her, the announcer said, handing him a control device for the chains. And enjoy. She breaks soon. The man didn't respond. He simply touched her arm. Let's go, he said. She followed. They walked through a dark hallway. Other slaves watched them go. Some looked jealous. Some looked afraid. The man didn't speak until they were inside his ship. The ship doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. He turned to her. You don't remember me, do you? He asked. She shook her head slowly. I know you, he said. Your name is Kale. You were a soldier once, not a slave. She stared at him, confused. Soldier? Yes, you were part of a human task force. You fought in the war. You were captured 2 years ago. She blinked. Flashes of fire, screams, a name, Earth. I was left behind, she whispered. He nodded. We thought you were dead, but I found you, finally. Why did you come? He looked into her eyes. Because I promised. And because you're not just some girl in chains, you're something else. Something powerful. She stepped back. No, I'm nothing now, just broken. No, he said. You're sleeping. But I can wake you. He pulled out a small injector. What is that? She asked. He didn't answer. Before she could move, he pushed the injector into her neck. The pain was sharp. Like fire running through her veins, she screamed. Then everything went black, somewhere deep in her mind. Something woke up, flashes of training guns, blood, orders running through alien. Ships explosions. She was a weapon. She wasn't weak. She was never weak. She opened her eyes. Her hands still shook. The chains were still there. Her body felt stronger. The man smiled softly. Welcome back, Kale. Kale woke up gasping for air. Her body was on a cold metal floor. Her arms still felt heavy. The chains were still there, but something was different now. She could feel the ship. The engines hummed low. The walls had a heartbeat. Every small sound, every movement in the air Her senses caught it all. She sat up slowly. The man who had bought her was sitting in a chair nearby, watching her. "You're awake," he said. She stared at him. "What did you do to me?" "I gave you something," he said calmly. "Something? That belongs to you." Her head ached. Memories floated just out of reach. Guns, running, screams in a language she couldn't remember. Her hands had once held power. "Not chains." She narrowed her eyes. "Who are you?" The man stood. "You can call me Rix. That's not my real name, but it'll do for now." He walked to a control panel and pressed a button. The chains on her arms clicked open and dropped to the floor. Kale stood slowly. Her legs trembled, but she didn't fall. "No more chains?" she asked. "For now," Rick said. She looked around. The ship was small, dark, and fast-looking. Not like the merchant cruisers. This was built for speed, not comfort. She noticed a strange symbol on the wall, 3 red stars inside a circle. Her heart jumped. "I know that," she whispered. "That symbol—" "You should," Rick said. "It was the mark of your unit." "Project Gaia." Kale touched the symbol. Flashes hit her mind like lightning, running through fire, voice commands in her ears. Something being injected in her back. A planet burning in the sky. Her own voice shouting, "We don't run! We end this!" She stumbled back. "What was Project Gaia?" she asked. "You were part of Earth's final defense experiment. Bio-modified humans, living weapons. You were the best one." Kale's eyes widened. "Then why was I in chains?" "Because," Rick said, voice suddenly cold, "you were left behind on purpose." She stared at him. "You don't mean they were afraid of what you might become?" He said, "So they sent your unit to a trap. You survived. The others didn't." Kale sat down. Her hands shook again. "They betrayed me," Rix nodded. "And then the slavers found you, took you, sold you like trash." She clenched her fists. "But you didn't break," he said, walking closer. "Even with your memory blocked. Even with your power locked. Deep inside, you stared at monsters and didn't cry. You held on." Kale's eyes burned. "So, what now? We run. We hide. We fight," Rick said, "but I don't even remember who I am." "You don't need to remember. You are who you are." "And who you are is dangerous." She stood. "If I'm so dangerous, why help me?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because once, before the war, I was your friend." Kale's breath caught. "Friend?" "Yes," he said softly, "and I made you a promise. That if the worst happened, I'd come find you." She turned away. "I don't remember." "You will," he said, "in time." Suddenly, the ship lights flashed red. Warning. Incoming ship detected. Unmarked. Fast approach. Rix ran to the controls. "No," he said, eyes narrowing. "They found us already." Kale stepped closer. "Who?" "Bounty hunters," he said. "Someone must have seen me buy you. The slavers want you back." "Why?" "Because now they know what you are." Kale's heart pounded. "What do we do? We fight or we die." He tossed her a small weapon. It felt warm in her hand. Like it knew her. The ship shook. "They're boarding." Kale's fingers tightened around the weapon. "I don't know." "If I can do this," she whispered. Rix looked at her. "You don't have to know. You just have to try." The doors exploded open. 3 armored bounty hunters stepped in, massive, armed, confident. Kale's body moved before her brain could. She ducked, rolled, fired once, twice. 2 bounty hunters dropped instantly. The third aimed at her too slow. She was already behind him. A punch to the throat. A twist of his wrist. A crack. He fell. Silence. Rick stared at her. Kale was breathing hard but steady. Her hands didn't shake anymore. She started. "You're remembering," he said. Kale turned to the broken door. Her voice was low. "They want me in chains." "Again, yes, they're going to regret that." Rick smiled faintly. "Now you're waking up." Kale looked down at her, hand blood on it. Not hers. A small spark of light flickered in her eyes. "Then let them come," she said. "Next time I won't hold back." The stars outside the ship moved like slow fireflies. Kale stood near the small window, watching them, arms crossed, jaw tight. She hadn't spoken in hours. Behind her, Rix worked on the ship's damaged systems. Sparks hissed. Wires hung like metal vines. You didn't miss a shot? He said finally. Kale didn't turn. It didn't feel like aiming, it felt like breathing. That's the training, Rix replied, tightening a bolt. Project. Gaia wasn't just muscle, it rewired instinct. Kale closed her eyes, her heartbeat was calm, too calm. That scared her more than the fight itself. I killed them like I was born for it, she whispered. You were. She turned. And that's supposed to make me feel better? No, Rick said. It's supposed to make you ready. Later, Kale sat alone in a small chamber, the only quiet place on the ship. The walls were gray, the floor cold. But her mind was loud. She stared at her hands, not shaking, not weak. But alien almost, then something pulsed behind her eyes, a sound. Distant at first, then closer. Unit 6, move left flank. A sharp voice, familiar. Cover the evac route. She saw smoke, fire, green skies, soldiers running. Alien drones. Dropping from the clouds like metal rain, she saw herself strong, fast, deadly, not in chains, in armor. Leading others, then a flash of white light, screaming, and silence. Kale snapped back to the present. Breath shaking, she remembered her unit, and how they died. Rix entered quietly. More coming back? Kale nodded. They died screaming, you survived. They left me. He knelt beside her. Not all of us did. Kale looked at him sharply. Rix hesitated, then spoke. I was part of the extraction team. I saw the order come through. Leave Project Gaia behind. You didn't stop it? She asked. I tried, he said. They threatened to court-martial. Me, said you were compromised. Said you might turn on us. Kale laughed bitterly. So they abandoned me before I could even fail. They feared you because they didn't understand you. She stood up slowly. Do you understand me? She asked. I understand that you're not just a weapon. Kale looked down. But I was built to be one, wasn't I? Rix didn't. And so that was answer enough. Suddenly, a beep echoed from the ship's console. Rix rushed over. Kale followed, heart already racing. What is it? She asked. He frowned. Encrypted message, strange source. He pressed a few keys. A distorted voice filled the room, metallic, inhuman. To the buyer of the girl, return the subject. And you may live. Keep her, and you die with her. Her power belongs to the exchange, not to you. Silence. Kale's fists clenched. They're calling me property. They want their weapon back, Rick said. They can try, she replied coldly. Hours later. Kale stood in the ship's armory, small, dusty, barely stocked. She found a long mirror behind a panel. She looked at herself, torn clothes, scars, tired eyes, but behind that, something new, or maybe something old. Soldier. Kale opened a metal box and pulled out a thin, black-suited military tech. She ran her fingers over the patch. Project Gaia, Unit 6. No chains. No mercy, her old suit. It still fit. She walked back to the cockpit. Rix turned. Stunned. You found it, he said. No, she replied. I remembered it. She sat down beside him. We're not running anymore, she said. What are you planning? Kale looked out at the stars. They think they know me. Think I'm still the broken thing in chains. And you're not? Kale's eyes narrowed. I was born Kale of Earth, trained to end wars. Left to rot in a cage, but I survived. She looked at him. I'm not in chains now. They are. Suddenly, alarm screamed across the console. Ship incoming, Rick said. Large, merchant-class cruiser. Looks like a slave retrieval ship. Kale stood. How long until they board? 5 minutes, maybe less. Kale walked to the hatch and picked up a plasma blade. You coming with me? She asked. Rix grabbed his blaster and stood by her side. Wouldn't miss it. The enemy ship latched onto theirs like a parasite. The airlock opened with a hiss. 10 armored slavers stormed through, but they weren't ready for what waited. Kale moved like fire. The plasma blade lit the room. 1 slaver down. 2, 3. Rix fired beside her tight. Controlled shots. The enemy fell in seconds. The last one dropped his weapon. Please, he begged. Don't kill me. Kale walked up to him. Where? Are the others? She asked. He shook. Coming, whole fleet. They want you alive. She leaned in. Then tell them this. She activated the come, voice calm and deadly. This is Kale of Earth. I am not your slave. I am not your weapon. I am your reckoning. Then she ended the transmission. Asterisk, the enemy fleet was coming, not one ship, not two. A fleet merchant warships with heavy guns and slaver squads, all racing through space to find one girl they had once owned, but Kale was not theirs anymore. She stood at the edge of the control room, armor scratched, blade still humming faintly in her hand. The blood of slavers was already drying on the floor. 3 ships on long-range scan. Rick said, eyes locked on the screen. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Kale didn't blink. We can't outrun them. No, Rick's replied. They're faster, bigger, heavily armed. Kale nodded. Then we don't run, he turned. You want to fight a fleet with this old rust bucket? She looked around the tiny ship, cracked metal. Weak shields. 1 working turret. I don't need the ship, Kale said quietly. I need me. She stepped into the engine bay. At the back, behind loose panels and tangled wires, was a sealed compartment with a black hand scanner, biometric locked. The machine said. Kale stared at it. Her hand moved on its own. The moment her skin touched the scanner, it lit up red. Then blue, then gold. Access granted. The wall slid open, revealing a single pod. Inside it, glowing with quiet energy, was the core. Rix arrived behind her, breath catching. You still have it? He whispered. Kale nodded slowly. They built it into my armor. Buried it when they thought I was lost. The core wasn't a weapon in the usual sense. It was worse. It was a brain, one linked only to her. It held data, code, commands from her old missions. It had the power to hack ships, control enemy tech, and burn systems from inside. It was meant for infiltration and, if needed, extinction. Kale placed her hand on the core. It connected with her nervous system instantly. Lights flickered across her suit. Her mind buzzed. Suddenly she felt the approaching ships. Like distant animals sniffing for prey. They're pinging our location, she said. Looking for heat signatures, engine noise. Rix looked worried. How do you know that? Because I can hear them now, she answered. The core is awake. Back in the cockpit, Kale's fingers moved across the console too fast. Her eyes glowed faintly. The ship responded as if it had gained a mind of its own. They're using old merchant codes. I'm flooding the system with false signals. What's the plan? Rix asked. Kale's voice was calm. We're going to board them before they board us, he blinked. You're serious? She turned to him. They wanted me in a cage. Let's show them what happens when the cage opens. Rix piloted the ship straight at the nearest cruiser, the merchant ship. Confused by the fake ID signals, opened its docking bay to receive what it thought was a returning patrol, but instead, Kale dropped in like a ghost. She moved through the halls of the cruiser in silence. The core whispered enemy positions into her mind. She didn't need maps. Her footsteps were light. Her blade silent. 2 guards fell before they could speak. She reached the control hub. Dozens of slavers were inside. One spotted her. Wait! He didn't finish the sentence. Kale was on them. The battle was fast, precise, brutal. She moved like lightning. But her face never changed. No rage. No fear, just purpose. Once the last slaver hit the floor, she moved to the main console and linked the core to the ship's system. Uploading virus, she whispered. The lights dimmed. The engines coughed. Kale stood, breathing slowly. Then she spoke through the comms to the other 2 ships in the fleet. This is Kale. Your sister ship now belongs to me. Next one that approaches will get the same gift, fire, and silence. Rix's voice came through the headset. They're pulling back. Cowards, she muttered. Kale walked back to the docking bay where Rix waited. He looked at her with something like fear but also awe. You just hijacked a warship with a knife. And a memory. She smiled faintly. I told you I don't need an army. I am one. They left the hijacked cruiser in flames behind them. Later, back on their own ship, Kale sat quietly, staring at her hands again. They were steady now, deadly, controlled, but her thoughts weren't about killing. They were about choice. Rix? she said, breaking the silence. Why didn't you let me rot like the others did? He sat beside her. Because I remembered who you were, he said. Even if you forgot, and because I owed you. For what? Rix looked down. You saved my sister. Back during the siege of Voronine, took a shot meant for her. Kale's eyes narrowed. A flicker of memory. A girl, crying, smoke all around. She had pulled the girl out, bleeding. I remember, Kale whispered. That's why I came back, he said. Not for Earth, not for the war, for you, Kale looked up at him. For the first time, her expression softened. I'm not done. She said, I know. There are more ships, more slavers, more chains, Rix nodded. Then we'll keep breaking them. Kale stood, the stars reflected in her armor. They thought I was the broken one, but now, I'm breaking them. The slave market looked the same. Same banners. Same dirty lights, same iron smell of blood and fear, but this time, Kale wasn't in chains. She stood at the edge of the cargo bay door, her black armor reflecting the faint red lights of the merchant. Outpost. Rix stood beside her, loading his weapon. You're sure about this? He asked. They sold pain, Kale replied. Now they'll taste it, the ship descended quietly. No alarm. No warning, because no one expected the merchandise to return. Inside the market, aliens haggled over cages and collars. Some laughed, some screamed, the weak begged. The powerful ignored. Then. The lights flickered, just once, then again, a humming noise began. Low, cold, wrong, the floor trembled. Suddenly, the main auction gate exploded inward. Kale walked through the smoke, calm, alone, not a slave, not a victim, a storm. The guards rushed forward. 6, maybe 7, armed. Kale didn't stop walking. 1. Raised his weapon. Kale raised her hand. The core pulsed. Snapped. His weapon jammed. Electricity surged into his armor. He dropped, shaking. The others hesitated. That was their mistake. Kale was already among them, fists like steel. A kick to the chest. A slam of a helmet into a wall. One guard tried to crawl away. She left him. He'd live with the memory. Rix hacked. Into the main security booth. Doors unlocked one by one. Cells opened. Slaves blinked, confused. Run, he told them. You're free. Some ran. Others just stared. One child pointed. Is that her? They all turned to look. Kale stood. On the central auction platform now, above them, one sold. Now, standing tall, covered in blood not her own, and not finished, the merchant master, a fat, slug-like alien with gold chains slithered forward, shaking with rage. You dare attack the exchange? Do you know who I am? Kale dropped down. In front of him, I do, she said softly. You're the one who bought me first. He paused, then he smiled. The quiet one. I remember now, still full of fire. Kale didn't smile. I remember too, she said. How you shocked me, how you laughed when I bled. His eyes narrowed. You think you scare me now? No, Kale said, and she reached behind her, pulling out a small metal disc. I think this will... She dropped it at his feet. He looked down. The disc blinked. Beep. Beep, he screamed. Kale turned, walking away. Boom. The explosion shook the market. Smoke poured from the master's chamber. Kale moved through the crowd, which was now full of screaming slavers and confused buyers. She didn't attack the weak. She ignored the ones who ran. She had a target, the exchange's central vault. Where the true leaders hid. In the vault chamber. 3 alien leaders were already trying to escape. She's here. One shouted, she's not supposed to have access. She's not supposed to be alive. The doors blew open. Kale stepped in. They fired at her. Energy bolts screamed through the air, but her armor held. She stepped forward, calm, unhurried. You? Built your empire on pain, she said. Sold lives. Broke minds. One of them trembled. It was just business. Kale's eyes burned. So is this. She raised both hands. The core surged. The vault systems fried. Lights shattered. Walls cracked, and the screams came. Later, silence filled the halls. The market was dead. Kale stood outside. Watching freed slaves board escape ships, Rix walked up to her. Quiet. You did it, he said. No, Kale replied. We started it. He looked at her. What now? She watched the ships leave, carrying people who had been nothing but numbers a day ago. They'll rebuild, she said. Somewhere else, new names, new cages. Then what do you want to do? Kale's voice was steady. I want to break. Every cage they build? She turned to a nearby terminal and activated a system-wide broadcast. The screen blinked, then her face appeared, bruised, armored, alive. This is Kale of Earth. You know me as a number. A product? A thing to be bought? No more. You built a world where pain is profit, where freedom is a joke, where the strong feed on the weak. I was one of them, but not anymore. I am free, and I'm coming. She ended. The broadcast, Rick smiled faintly. You just declared war. Kale nodded. Good, let them come. She looked out at the stars. They thought breaking me was the end, but they just lit the fire. Kale stood in silence, watching stars drift past the ship's window like silent ghosts. The market was gone. The slavers were scattered, and yet she didn't feel free. Inside her, something stirred, heavy, hot, wrong. Something's not right, she whispered. Rix looked up from the console. What do you mean? Kale's eyes narrowed. The core. It's too quiet. She walked to the med bay, sealed the doors, and opened a hidden port in her suit. Her fingers hesitated, then pressed into her skin. A soft click, the panel in her chest opened. Inside, glowing faintly, was the control chip, a device no one had mentioned. Not even Rix. She stared at it. Her breathing slowed. She didn't remember this, but her body did. She sat down, linked herself to the ship's diagnostic system. Begin internal scan, she ordered. The AI responded. Unauthorized implant detected. Project Gaia failsafe module active. Failsafe? She muttered. If subject shows signs of rebellion or uncontrolled power, automatic override will be activated. Kale's blood turned cold. Activate hidden logs, she said. The screen blinked. Then a voice played. A man's voice, cold, clinical. Subject 6 has exceeded power tolerance limits. Mental drift observed. Initiate lockdown protocol. Memory. Suppression in progress. Deploy to enemy space as a test scenario. If survival occurs, prepare for extraction and study. Kale felt like the air had been punched out of her lungs. They hadn't abandoned her. They had used her. Rix knocked softly. You okay? She didn't answer at first. Then she opened the door, slowly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were not. You knew, she said. Rix paused. Not all of it. But you knew enough. You knew I wasn't just modified, I was designed. He stepped forward, regret in his voice. I found pieces. I didn't know about the failsafe chip. You were there, Rix, she said, voice sharp. You saw the plan. I thought it was dead code? Just backup control? She turned away. They didn't throw me away. They programmed me to fall. Silence hung between them. Kale touched the side of her neck. The pain she'd felt for weeks now made sense. The chip wasn't just blocking memories. It was controlling her choices. You think I'm free, she said quietly, but I've been following orders I never heard. No, Rick said. You broke their control the moment you stepped onto that market stage and didn't beg. Kale looked at him. Then why is the chip still glowing? Suddenly, the core inside her flared, lights flickered across the ship. A voice echoed inside. Her skull not real, not human. Warning. Subject approaching instability threshold. Execute reset protocol. Kale fell to her knees. Hands on her head, she was burning from the inside. The core wasn't just tech, it was a prison, and it wanted to shut her down. Rix ran to her side. Fight it, Kale! She screamed. The glow spread across her skin. Her eyes flickered red, then white. The ship shook. Systems went offline. Rix grabbed a tool and reached for her chest panel. He had one chance. Sorry, he whispered. He pulled the chip free. Kale's body jerked violently, then went still. Silence. The lights stabilized. Rix sat back, holding the smoking chip in his hand. Kale didn't move. Kale, he whispered. Then her fingers twitched. She opened her eyes. No glow. No commands. Just breath. She sat up slowly. What happened? Rix held up the chip. You were about to burn. The chip triggered full reset mode. She stared at it. And, you removed it? He nodded. I could have died. He smiled. I knew you wouldn't. Kale looked down at her hands. They didn't tremble. No voice whispered in her head. No code. No commands. Just silence. Peaceful, frightening. Real. Later. Kale stood in the cargo bay alone. She held the chip in her hand. So small, so deadly. This was my leash, she whispered. Even after the chains were gone, this stayed. She crushed it. Sparks flew. Dust fell. Rix entered. We just got an intercepted message. Kale turned. From who? High-level transmission from the merchant network. They know you destroyed the market. They've put a bounty on your head. How big? He handed her the datapad. She read the number. Then smiled. They're scared. Terrified, Rix said. But they also know what you really are now. Kale looked at the stars again. No, they still think I'm just a weapon that escaped. She turned to him. I'm more than what they built. He nodded. So what now? Kale's voice was calm, clear. We go after the source. The ones who wrote the code, who put the chains in my head. And if they try to stop you, Kale smiled, they already did. She stepped into the pilot seat and set course, for the first time in her life. The voice in her head was her own. The sky above Sector 01 was quiet, too quiet. Rix's ship floated near the edge of a black space station, surrounded by wreckage, broken drones, dead satellites, and silence. Kale stood in front of the viewport, her armor scratched and scarred, but still glowing from within. Her hands didn't shake. Her eyes didn't flicker. They were steady, focused. This is it, Rix said behind her. The Cornet relay, where the command codes were written, where they made you. Kale nodded. And where it ends. Inside the station, deep beneath steel and darkness, was a cold chamber full of machines that had no faces, but gave orders like gods. The architects of Project Gaia, they didn't fight. They didn't bleed. They simply pressed buttons and people. Like Kale broke. No one had ever reached them. Until now. Kale landed first. No. Alarm sounded. No guards met her. Just endless white halls and whispers in her mind. Feels like a tomb, Rix muttered, stepping beside her. It is, Kale said. A graveyard for everything they tried to bury in me. They reached the core room. Massive screens blinked. Dozens of cables hung like vines. In the center sat a single glowing chair, the command throne, and behind it, standing like shadows, were the three last architects. Old, cold, human, Rix blinked. They're not aliens? Kale's voice was hollow. No, they're us. One of the architects stepped forward, a woman with silver eyes and no expression. Subject 6, she said. You've come home? Kale didn't move. This isn't my home. It never was. You were designed to return here, the woman said. To be perfected, Kale took a step forward. I was designed to obey. But I'm not yours anymore. The second architect spoke. His voice was sharp. We gave you strength, purpose, we gave you life? No, Kale replied. You gave me pain, chains, lies. The third one laughed. You still don't understand. You are not a person. You are a program with bones. Kale's face didn't change, but her voice turned cold. And what does that make you? The lights flickered. Kale stepped onto the platform. They tried to activate the failsafe. Rix saw it first red light, blinking fast. They're trying to overwrite your core. Kale didn't flinch. I burned the leash. But her body began to tremble. The core inside her suit sparked. Voices whispered in her ears. Not memories, commands. Stand down. Deactivate. Return to rest. Kale fell to her knees. The architect smiled. See, said the woman, you're still ours. Kale closed her eyes. The pain inside was not fire now, it was ice. Cold, creeping, silent, like death, she heard Earth, her squad. Her screams, her silence, she remembered chains, then she remembered the girl on Vora 9, the child she saved, not because of a command. Not because of code, because she chose to, because she was human. She opened her eyes, the core flared gold, the pain stopped, she stood slowly. Surely, no more chains, she said. She reached back and pulled the power cable from her own suit. sparks flew, systems died, but she remained standing. The architect stepped back. That's not possible. One shouted. Kale stepped forward. You built me to be your weapon, but you failed. You think this is freedom? The woman asked. Kale nodded. No, this is freedom. She pulled a second cable, the main core link to the station, all lights. Shut off. The walls trembled, alarms screamed. Back up. Reactors blinked on, but Kale had already moved. One strike, two, the control console exploded. Kale and Rix ran, alarms following them like hounds. Behind them, the core room collapsed in flames. The architects? Lost under fire and steel, just like the project they created. On board the ship, Kale sat in silence. Her hands were cut. Her armor cracked, but her eyes clear. Rix stood beside her, holding two things, a broken chip and a patch from her old uniform. Project Gaia, Unit 6, no chains, no mercy. He held it out to her. She took it, then tossed it into the fire. I'm not their unit anymore. He smiled. Then who are you? She looked out at the stars. They wanted a weapon. They got a woman. Across the galaxy, the signal spread. The architects are dead. The cages are broken. The slaves are free. And with it, a new name echoed through the systems. Kale, the Unchained. Some called her a ghost. Some called her a hero. Some still called her dangerous. But one thing was true. She was free, and she was never going back.